Welcome to the Pastors and Money podcast. I'm Joy Suzanne Hunt, pastor and financial coach, bringing you conversations about personal finance, church finance, and how we disciple our churches in the areas of finance and stewardship. You can find the episode show notes and more at pastorsandmoney.com. And here's the show. Nathan Walters is the president of Mission Discovery, an organization with over 3 decades of experience leading mission trips around the world. He helps connect churches, schools, and volunteers with opportunities to serve through building projects, medical care, and humanitarian aid. Nathan is passionate about encouraging people to live out their faith through hands-on service and works to create life-changing experiences for everyone involved in Mission Discovery's efforts. Well, Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. It's good to be here.
So to get started, Nathan, can you tell us a little bit about Mission Discovery and how you got started in this ministry?
Mission Discovery. So Mission Discovery started in 1991 when I was 7 years old. So I didn't start it. I found it way later in life. It was basically started by a guy named Maury Buchanan who saw a need and wanted to meet it. Our mission is to mobilize the church and support the physical and spiritual needs of the world's poor. He saw that there were a lot of people in need around the world, and he wanted to meet that need. And then he felt the call to start a missions organization. And he was kind of questioning that, so he met with his pastor, and the pastor asked him, Maury, would God call you to do a God-sized thing or a Maury-sized thing? And he didn't answer right away because he was like, he knew the answer, but he really didn't know where to go. And so later on that year, he started Mission Discovery at his kitchen table. And quite a few years later, in 2009, I found Mission Discovery and went on my first mission trip. And I just fell in love with it. We were building homes in Mexico. We built 8 homes that week. And I loved it so much that I paid to stay the following week and do an extra week. It's just something about the service and the youth and I was leading worship and just construction, all these things that I had a passion for in my life were kind of coming together as one. And so it was really a time when I saw firsthand the body of Christ becoming the hands and feet of Christ, and serving each other, serving those in need. And it really spoke to me because I had never been a part of something that eye-opening before. It changed my perspective. It changed everything about me. I just got completely wrecked that week. So that's how I found Mission Discovery quite a few years after it was started.
Then how did you end up in the role that you're in now?
You have to ask God that question. I have no idea. No idea. So that was in 2009. It took me 5 years to get hired. I knew in 2009 on that first trip that I was supposed to do Mission Discovery. It was like, okay, God had never spoken more clearly to me in my entire life. It's just like, you're supposed to do this. And then it was a long period, 5 years of waiting. A portion of that time was raising funds to start. All of our project coordinators here raise our funds to be on staff. And so it was just like, that was a giant mountain right there for me. You say, okay, you got to go raise your salary and you don't have any experience doing that. And you don't have a lot of people that you can go to do that. It's like a crazy, eye-opening experience, but it was just a giant mountain to climb and to get over. And the truth is, I didn't climb it. God moved it. And so it was just to go from there. I started as a project coordinator, which is just leading trips, leading the groups on the trips. I grew through that. I started a 7-month mission program that had a successful launch. I then became the communications guy, so doing all like the social media and website stuff, which I don't think I was great at, but I was filling a seat. But I think to answer the question probably is I'm passionate about what we do. And through all of the different roles that I've had here, the passion has remained the same. I sat down at a coffee shop with the president at the time, and we had about an hour-long conversation before he sprung on me that he was wanting to retire and the board wanted to pass the buck to me, and I was like, okay. I mean, it's kind of like one of those things that God's leading you somewhere, so you say yes. But yeah, if you were to ask me, when I first started or even way before that, I didn't grow up with anything. I never thought travel was a possibility for me.
Mhm.
It wasn't even on the radar growing up, and so probably the least likely person to be sitting in this chair running the organization right now is me. And somehow God has me here. So
That's just how.
yeah, just walk through the door that he opens, that's kind of it.
That's right. So you've seen your own, you told us a little bit about your own experience, but now you've gotten to observe a lot of people coming on these missions trips over the years,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So, in your experience, how do those missions trips impact the spiritual growth and the generosity of the people that participate?
It's hard to remember a mission trip where there was no transformation. We do these trips because most of the time the trips start on Sunday, they end on Saturday. So one of the main reasons that we do them is because the person that comes on Sunday is not the person that leaves on Saturday.
Mhm.
Something has happened during the week and their eyes have been opened, their perspective has shifted. God has spoken to them in an incredible way that they probably never experienced before. I remember leading a trip, it was in Virginia. We don't just go internationally, we have trips in the States too, and even trips right in our backyard. So I was in Virginia one time. And this guy stood up and said, I finally found my purpose in life. His name
Wow.
was Al, and he was 85 years old. So it was just like God just kind of like turned the light bulb on for him. And so it's so interesting how God works in the least expected ways on these trips. So lives are always transformed on these trips. And how, you're talking about generosity. It's when you go and you experience, even in our backyard, even in Tennessee, I remember this was before I worked for Mission Discovery. I was doing some side jobs and I saw on Craigslist this saw for sale. And I was like, I need that saw. And it was in a place called Westmoreland, Tennessee. Now, I'd been to Westmoreland before because Mission Discovery had a camp there. So
Mhm.
I knew about Westmoreland. What I didn't know was like that when you went out there and you took a right on this road and kept going for about 15 minutes, still Westmoreland. And
Mhm.
this is about not even an hour from Nashville. You're taking a ride on this road and you go down and there's people digging ditches on the side of the road as I'm going to pick a saw up. And I'm like, what's going on? I finally go get to the saw place. I'm like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I said, what are all these people doing? She said, yeah, we're getting running water. And I said, what do you mean running water? She said, yeah, well,
Wow.
I mean, we get running water. Yeah, we usually go down to the creek and, get all our water from there. But now we're getting running water over here. Not an hour from Nashville. And so it's stuff like that. This is right in our backyard. So you go and you experience people that live a completely different life than you do, whether it be in Guatemala or whether it be in Tennessee. You're going to have a different, like I said, perspective. You're going to have a different outlook. And a lot of times, what we hear on trips is like, we do something called God sightings. And so, in the middle of worship at night, we do worship every night,
Mhm.
we ask the question, where did you see God today? And everybody has a chance to answer if they want to. And by the end of the week, or kids or adults are saying, I came on this trip, I had no idea what I was expecting, but I really see how much we have. Even if they don't have a lot, it's like I really see how much we do have. Their perspective shifts in that way. And so they're opened up to the idea of, I have a lot, which means I have a lot to give.
Mhm.
And I'm going to hold my life and the things that I have with open hands because I've seen what a difference little can do. And that's the gospel. God can do amazing things with the little that we offer, the loaves and the fishes. And so people do. I mean, the generosity, the idea of serving others, all that stuff comes alive when you go on a mission trip. You just wake up a little bit more.
Yeah. Can you share a particular story, a particularly powerful story of transformation, the transformation you've witnessed from a missions trip?
Yeah, I can tell one from a couple years ago. It sticks out in my mind. We had a girl come with her dad and her sister to Mexico. So it was two sisters and their dad, and their mom didn't come. I didn't really understand what was going on, but the dad and mom were separated, and the
Mm.
mom was actually Wiccan. And so the dad had had his life radically transformed by a wonderful church in Clarksville, Tennessee, and the works of that church, how they were serving God.
Mhm.
So God changed his life radically. One girl was kind of on board, the other girl not so much. In fact, the reason she came on the trip was to disrupt the work of Christ on the trip. She was not about it. She didn't understand why she was going. She didn't want to be there. And she didn't want others to pressure her into this Jesus thing. She wanted to disrupt their small groups and everything. The trip starts on a Sunday, it ends on a Saturday. By Tuesday, she decided to follow Christ.
Wow.
And on Friday, her dad baptized both of those girls in the pool there in Mexico.
Wow. Praise God.
One of the stories. It's like there are so many stories like that, but that's just a radical transformation, like I say, that happens on these trips. Obviously, there was a lot of work done ahead of time in that girl's heart. God, and this is what we say about trips. You're not bringing the gospel to Mexico. You're not bringing the gospel to Guatemala or Westmoreland, Tennessee. God is already working there. He's already churning hearts. He's already speaking to these people in ways that we can't even see. And so the gospel that you are bringing is just going to feed into what God's already doing. And so obviously in that girl's life, God had already been at work, even though she didn't realize it. And she just came and her heart was prepped and ready to turn over to Jesus.
That's so fun. I love it.
Yeah.
So, this is the Pastors and Money podcast, right? And so part of what our mission is to help the church disciple our people in the areas of generosity and stewardship and just how we manage finances. And so how do you see missions trips affecting the culture of generosity in a church?
That's a great question. We've had several churches actually that have come with Mission Discovery, and their entire uh, culture shifts inside that church. There's one church that built a complete missions program because they came on a mission trip. They figured out this is very important. For some reason, the people that went got so much out of it that they became more givers and servers at the church. A lot of times a mission trip is a step into a service role at the church. Once somebody's doing something at a church, this is kind of like the thought I have here at Mission Center. Once somebody goes on a mission trip, they're doing something. The second step then is to become donors, to get involved with the giving of the church, because they realize that the mission of the church aligns with their passions. And so when something like that happens, it's like, okay, we're going, we're doing, now we're giving, it's just a natural flow. So I feel like mission trips are a good seed, a good starting point for people to jump on and become passionate about the mission of the church that they go to. Even stories as incredible as we had one church go, and it was a giant mega church, and they built this missions program after coming on a mission discovery trip. And their goal after doing that became to give 90% of what they brought in as a church to the mission field.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's something about a mission trip or missions in general that ties directly to the generous heart.
It really it puts skin on some of those things that we know are happening intellectually, but you haven't seen it. And
right.
then
Yeah.
there's just something about being present in person with people that God just uses that to tug on your heartstrings.
Right.
That's where relationships are built, right? Not that you can't have, we're having this conversation over Zoom, right? But I remember I got to go up to Northern California and baptize one of my coaching clients a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time we've met in person. And she
Wow.
held me so tight. It was like, we were close before that. We've been working together for a year, but there's just something different.
Right.
To be in the same room, to be standing in the same lake.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think that God uses that in our relationships, but God uses that in stirring our heart for what breaks his.
That's a dangerous prayer to pray, break my heart for what breaks yours. That is a dangerous prayer. I found that out,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's powerful. The tangible, just seeing somebody face to face. What happens, I can look at the screen all day, and you can even see this on social media, right? People get some happy on social media because there's a screen separating, them from the reality of the people that they're talking to. And so what they say with their thumbs is a lot different than what they might say with their mouth, And so, yeah, being with people face to face kind of takes away that barrier.
Hmm.
And, you can see and empathize with people when you're standing next to them. And so I think that's a lot of the perspective shifts that happen on a trip is like you're going to Guatemala and you see this mom with two kids and you're thinking, I'm a mom with two kids. You realize that these people are no different than me and that we all have lives. I have to provide for my family just like this guy has to provide for his. There's something that happens when you get face to face with other people.
Now, sometimes I've heard one of the questions about short-term missions can be there's a lot of cost and is there really an impact and all this and you're not there to be able to invest in that community long
Mhm.
term, but I think that these short-term trips are just as much about the education of the person going
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
as they are about the community that they're impacting. It's not one or the other. I think it's both.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. That is a question, and it's a valid question, There's no doubt that when you look at the price of a mission trip, you're looking at travel, you're looking at food and lodging, you're looking at transportation. These things add up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So mission discovery, that's what we take care of all the logistics. We kind of give like a flat price, so that
Mm-hmm.
people don't have to worry about planning all this stuff. But it adds up.
Right.
And so the question becomes for a church leader, is the cost, the dollar amount, is it worth it? Is it going to anything that's valuable? And that's really something that I would encourage prayer over, because I would say yes. I mean, I would say that I've seen enough life transformation in church attendees and the people that are actually on the field that we're going to serve. I've seen it all. And I would say absolutely you couldn't put a cost on that. We're just talking about the face-to-face interaction. There's a relationship that happens between the people on the ground and the people that are coming to serve that you just don't get. I would say you could do it in your backyard too. I think one of the things that for smaller churches maybe that are just trying to get their foot into the door, finding a nonprofit in the local area just to build this idea of serving others with your congregation, that puts your foot in the door and then build up to the trip where you actually take a drive down the road a few hours to serve or go overseas. I think the cost for sure is worth it. But everybody has to decide for themselves. It's like that's a prayer that you pray, and you ask God. I, you know, enjoy talking with people that, may not have an issue spending gobs and gobs and gobs of money on a cruise, but have an argument against serving on a mission trip.
Right.
And nothing against cruises. I've never been on one. I'm sure they're great, but nothing against cruises. But I just, I think just thinking through a
Mm-hmm.
little bit those things is a good idea. Praying about them
Right.
for
And then
sure.
we'll spend it on a car, right?
Yeah,
Spend it
spend it on
on
a car, get a car note, right?
right.
No.
And so yeah, I haven't had one of those for a few years.
There you
I
go.
was talking to one of our, you know, my mom was a missionary kid, so a lot of my
Oh, nice.
kind of aunties and uncles are these veteran missionaries that she grew up
Sure.
with, right?
That's
And
amazing.
I was talking to one of them several years ago and asking about this, like how does that work with short-term missions, and because are you able to build relationships, and what is that, is it just like a tourist thing or what's happening there? And they told
Right.
me that many of the full-time long-term missionaries were called while they were on a short-term trip.
100%. I was just in the Bahamas a couple weeks ago visiting with a bunch of our ministry partners there. That's the other piece. I'll get to the ministry partner piece in just a second, but I was visiting with a couple and their first trip, they went to the Bahamas with Mission Discovery way back in the day. And when they were leaving the Bahamas, they got on a plane to go back. And while they're back in the States, they're not there for a day, I don't think. And the wife was like, I got to go back. I'm called. They called Mission Discovery. They got with the leaders and they figured out a way to make it happen. Now they're full-time missionaries there in the
Wow.
Bahamas, and they have been for years and years and years. And that's not the only case, of course, but that just comes to mind because I was with them a couple weeks ago. those are our ministry partners. And another thing that I want to say too about the short-term versus long-term missionary or mission trips, so to speak, is like there we have ministry partners. So when a team comes from Oklahoma and another team comes from California, comes with us to serve in Guatemala, we're working with the same people that we've been working with for more than 12 years now. And all of our ministry partners are really like that. When we commit to someone, we're sticking with them for the long haul. So, what teams are actually doing are playing a part in the story that God is writing with that ministry there in that town. And Mission Discovery and our teams just come to kind of amplify what they're doing and provide some extra muscle, some extra funds for them to do it. And so, yeah, I would say there's another aspect there of, do short-term mission trips really make a difference or how? Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you're just dropping into somewhere that you don't intend to talk to for the next year, 2 years,
Hmm.
you might want to rethink it. But for Mission Discovery, all of our partners are family to us,
Yeah.
and we're always in contact with them.
Yeah. I was hearing the director of something global for Convoy of Hope was a speaker at
Oh, yeah.
an event I was at
Okay.
a month ago. And he was telling us how Convoy of Hope, with their poverty alleviation initiatives, when they go into
Mhm.
places, they don't go in unless there's already an established missions or church presence there to
100%.
be able
Yeah.
to take the reins and be able to disciple people as they go in and serve. Like that's one of the key components, because otherwise it would be just like what you talked about, go drop in something for a week or two or even a few
Right.
months, and
Hmm.
then there's nothing to carry it on after. But if you already have those relationships on the ground to make sure that these people are going to get discipled and get the support that they need on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, so we say that we only go where we're invited.
Mhm.
So where there's a ministry that is already happening, we can look at that ministry and we have like a set of qualifications that we can kind of say, hey, this is great. This, maybe we need to work on this area a little bit, but we kind of dream together. And if they invite us and our teams to serve, then as long as it's a sustainable ministry that is well put together and respected by the community around them, really making a difference,
Mhm.
then we'll look at coming and bringing teams there. So, yeah, and it's all strategic, You want to empower the right partners. And so that's kind of the way that we go. It's hard too because sometimes people are reaching out and it is like Johnny that's starting his own ministry there and you just have no, I'm sure it's great, he has a great
Mhm.
heart. But as far as like what are safety measures when we're bringing a team of 25?
Mhm.
How far is the hospital from the hotel if we need to get there? It's sort of things that we have to walk people through and thinking about. And so that's why it's another benefit of having a well-established ministry that's used to working with people. All those things are generally thought through and you can have some conversations about them. So, yeah.
That's good to know. So, because I have some missionaries that listen to this show as well.
Oh,
So,
good.
those are people, if they want to be able to invite a team out, that they could reach out to you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, people reach out to us all the time. So we're always in prayer over the people that do reach out to us because there's no way that we can get to them all. And once, like I say, once we're in a place, we're in it. We've been in Guatemala for, my goodness, I don't even know how long, well over. So with the ministry partner now, probably 15
Mhm.
years. Yes, 15 years. It was 2009. And then, Mexico, 28 years. For an organization that's been around for 33 years now, we've got some pretty long-standing ministry partners we've worked with for a long, long time. So,
Yeah, some good roots there.
yeah, oh yeah. Good roots, good, it's relationship, it's family. Our ministry partner out in Mexico lost her husband, so we went out for that. And then she also got put in the hospital recently or under a year ago. So we
Mhm.
went out for that. It's the things you do, things that you would do for your own mother or aunt, you're doing for your ministry partner out there.
Sure. So, I know some of our smaller churches might feel that mission trips are out of reach. They don't have enough financial resources, or sometimes it's even the human resources of literally somebody to manage this process. And I know you even had some ideas of some more local ways that you can start. But what would you say to encourage those smaller churches to be able to go ahead and get started?
I would say, Mission Discovery really we take a few large churches. I would say the benefit of an organization like us is that we can take small churches as well, and we can partner them up with each other so they've got enough people there to actually make a good impact while we're there. In fact, we have families that join us all the time, and we can partner families up with other churches that are going places. So I would say you don't have to be a certain number of people for your church to go on a trip. We can partner you up, and going through an organization like us means, if you're a small church, you don't have staff to put everything together. We do all of the logistics so that all you have to do is kind of sign up, look at plane tickets, and meet us on the ground. So definitely give us a call. If you don't trust my voice, look at other organizations online that are doing the same thing. I would say that I'm very proud of Mission Discovery, the way we work. So call us first. But also, like I said earlier, getting involved with local nonprofits is a great idea for small churches. It's not a lot of commitment and it's not a lot of money to just go and serve at your local food pantry. Places have thrift stores for people that need those places always need help. So yeah, there are generally some nonprofits or ways to help in your area, and you can do that. So those are a couple examples. I would just say, first, of course, like I've said a couple times, is just pray. We are all called to serve in some capacity, and serving on a mission trip, like I said, is a very eye-opening and rewarding experience, and you really do make a long-lasting impact when you go with an organization like Mission Discovery. But I do understand that that's a lot to think about and pray about. And so another reason why we're here is to pray with you. So yeah.
Let's talk about what happens after the trip, right? So we did talk a little bit about the impact of like long-term giving and volunteering, but what about how do we effectively debrief and follow up after a mission trip to be able to maintain that momentum?
Yeah, that's a great question. Debriefing is very important. In our training packets, we give a debrief schedule. So it kind of lays out, here are the meetings you should have before a trip, and here's a meeting that you might think about after a trip. Mission Discovery, every day we come together and we debrief the trip. Every night we have a worship session, somebody teaches, and then we break off into small groups where you can talk together about what God's doing on the trip. Built into the schedule, there is a debrief time. But what we generally like to do is say, like, 2 weeks to a month after the trip, maybe have a dinner together where you invite all the team members together and share what life's been like post-trip. A lot of people, and this is the thing that I would say, a lot of people are wrecked after a mission trip. They see things they never thought they would see, and then coming back into the States is more of a culture shock than going out of the States almost sometimes, because life is just so different. So I would say debriefing that time with each other is important. A lot of churches also do like a mission Sunday where they'll present photos and video from the trip and show the rest of the congregation, this is what we were involved in. That's another great way to get the trip giving and get their gears turning toward next year's mission trip.
You talked about, people coming back, and the word you used, wrecked, it's just like the perfect word for that, right? But then it's almost like you need to give somebody a path of what some of their next steps are going to look like. Not just... I've seen that sense of emotional overwhelm and like, okay, there's this huge need out there. Now what? And so how can we help people with the now what?
The now what? Yeah, well, like I said, the mission trip itself is going to open some eyes. If it's a first mission trip for a church, you may not already have a system of outreaches that you're doing. Maybe missions is not that big of a deal for your church, But if it is, then that's a great opportunity to get those people that have gone on the trip to get deeper into serving with the church, serving with the different outreaches that the church does. It's a night where they bring in people from the rescue mission and give them a place to stay for the night and that kind of thing. But a lot of churches do different things to serve their own communities. Every church has a mission and a vision, and so every church is full of missionaries, right? So the idea is, how is the church serving the community around you and inviting those people to come back to the church and serve at the church? That is a giant piece that these mission trips can feed into if you get these volunteers to say, okay, I want to commit to something else here at the church. And so that's what I would say. Now what, if you're talking about, like, let's say you're going to Jamaica with Mission Discovery. I mentioned earlier, we've got doers. We got the volunteers that go and do, and then they want to take that deeper step. They say, now what? and then they become donors. And
Mhm.
so they might support the school for the deaf that we worked at in Jamaica, that kind of thing. Going and doing is a
Mhm.
great way to serve the community, but funding that community is another great way to serve. And just like that, funding the church and their mission, also a great way to serve. They all kind of feed in, mission trip kind of feeds into all of that. What's next? Well, you can support the mission by funding. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, being intentional about building those connections between whatever your missions or kingdom builders or whatever you call your missions program
Yeah.
and the organizations that you're working with as you're going on a trip as well, giving, okay, so we just were there, but also this is one of our partners that we support throughout the year.
Absolutely.
And so now that's a tangible, oh wait, I know those people, or at least I know somebody who knows those people. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So as there's pastors listening that maybe their church has never done a trip, or they as a pastor have never led a trip before, and they're considering whether they're going to do that. What's some advice that you could give them?
Well, so I want to make, if a pastor's listening and they're feeling the call to go on a mission trip, you want to make connection, talk to somebody who's done it. My first instinct is to say, hey, call Mission Discovery because we're here every day and we're like, hey, we'll talk about mission trips all day with you if you want. But also calling a local pastor or a friend that's done something like that before, getting their take on how it affected their church, asking questions like the questions that you just asked me on this podcast, and ask that local church or your pastor friend how they've experienced growth in their church because they went on a mission trip. I think that's a great idea. Just open those communication channels. That's step one, is just get the information that you can about going on a mission trip. A lot of times pastors have experienced a mission trip, but they haven't led one. An organization like Mission Discovery that does this, that has full-time employees, that has partners that we've worked with for years, so that we're vetted and we're making strategic choices that make a long-term impact rather than a short-term one. It's also like you're going for a short time, but you really want to make the most impact that you can. Organizations like us, we make sure that happens, and then we take care of all the details and stuff. So really, if it's your first time, you'd probably want to go with an organization that knows the ropes and that can take care of all of the logistics. So, one that's really trusted. And so we can give you the names of a million youth pastors, and you can call and see how their trip was. And so, yeah, I would say those two things: call somebody that talk to them about it. Call us, we'll talk to you about it all day. And then pray. I'll tell you the things that will happen, which I think is where this question might lead, is, okay, you want to go on the mission trip, and going back to your last question, now what? I think the enemy is a master at distraction. So when you get this idea that you want to go on a mission trip, I think there's a trigger in the enemy's strategy against us that says, hey, there's a great chance that this mission trip is going to do a crazy lot of good. It's going to impact a lot of people for Christ. And so I want to stop that. I'm going to disrupt that. I'm going to distract this person from following through on that thought. And so what will happen is you'll think about the money. That's so much money. How am I going to get all that money to go on this trip? You'll think about the time. How much time and energy is it going to take to pull off a trip like this? And these are stories that I know from experience. You're going to think about your church congregation. You're going to think, who's going to want to go on a trip like this? How am I going to ever get the commitment level that I need to get from these people? Who's going to communicate with these people? All the details. What I'm going to tell you is look at Scripture and look at the mountains that God moves in Scripture. And what you're talking about is just a little hill. And God is easily going to move that. And so we just have to think and pray and put our faith that God is going to follow through with what he's calling us to do. I've seen it multiple times. I know that every pastor that's listening to this has a story of their own. It's like God did move this mountain before. Right. And it was a major attack from the enemy, and he can surely take care of the logistics of a mission trip. Mission Discovery is here to help. We do all that stuff. We give you back your time so you don't have to plan all the logistics. We help follow through with your volunteers and their paperwork because I know that's going to seem like a lot. We have resources to give you that would help you raise a crazy amount of money that you never thought was possible. We're here to help. And so I know that story all too well. The distraction is a limiting factor that will come in. And the enemy uses it all the time on people. He used it on me for years. And once you move away from that, let God move that mountain, you won't be disappointed.
Amen. So as we get ready to wrap up here, how can listeners and these pastors and missionaries listening connect with you and learn more about what Mission Discovery is doing?
Yeah, missiondiscovery.org. It's that easy. I mean, we have social media and all that stuff, and we've got a girl here at the office that does a great job with it, much better than I did when I was in charge. So you can look at Miss Dis Trips is what our social media handles are, at Miss Dis Trips. But easier than that is just missiondiscovery.org, and that's how you'll find us. And push a little button on there, and we'll get in touch with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nathan, and of course to your team for all the incredible work that y'all are doing and for spending some time with us today.
Oh my goodness, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to know what you think about it. You can leave a comment on the show notes at pastorsandmoney.com/podcast or email me at joy@pastorsandmoney.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. This helps us to get the word out and invite more people into these conversations. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Pastors and Money. I can't wait to talk again soon.